So this is a podcast of open-minded. My name is Roberto, and
My name is Alejandro.
today, the first episode of our podcast is gonna be about bullying.
So, as many as you may know, as Robert must know, the issue of bullying has taken the media by a storm. There's been various cases, like the case of the boy who was bullied and he received a couple of blows to his head, which caused them to lose balance and bump the back of his head onto a wall, and later, which once he was transported to the hospital after various hours, he was pronounced dead. And another boy who is autistic named Raiden, he suffered bullying in a video which he was chased by many kids and he was kicked and punched. And there was another video which was very graphic, very violent, in a school in Baltimore, which seemed to be a private school because the children, they were wearing uniform, and one kid, a very calm kid, he walked inside the restroom and he was surrounded by many others. And one of the kids surrounding, the kid with the glasses, just yanked off his glasses, threw them on the floor. The calm kid picked up the glasses, and once he put them back on, he was punched. And once he received the first punch, he was pushed around, and many other kids came around and they continuously punched him and kicked him to the body and kicked him to the head and punched him to the head, and the kid didn't do anything about it. And after this video surfaced on social media, a famous MMA fighter named Dylan Dallas reached out to the student, and he got him in contact with a jiu-jitsu practitioner, and the jiu-jitsu practitioner is teaching him how to learn jiu-jitsu in order to defend himself in these type of scenarios. And one thing that caught my interest about this video was how it seemed to me that it was pretty odd how no one from the school staff noticed a bunch of kids basically walking to a restroom, and the noise that came out from that restroom, it was maybe around 20 or plus kids that were in the restroom surrounding the kid.
But you could assume that like the teachers or the staffs, they just thought that they were just kids playing around in the restroom.
But that's the issue, that the staff might think that the students, since they're kids, they might think that they're playing rough and tumbling around. But it says in an article that by News One that the kid who suffered the various blows to his head, he was 11 years old. He was a 5th grader. So these kids should be mature enough to understand, because another problem is that these kids don't understand that if you're receiving various blows to the head, very strong impacts, you're damaging your brain, and if you're damaging your brain, that means you're damaging your neurons. And at the moment, there hasn't been sufficient study or advanced medical equipment in order to repair your neurons or just create new ones. So in the long run, this kid would probably end up with some type of disorder, maybe PTSD, or suffer some decreased motor movement or fine motor skills.
It should be more for it should be more of so what you're saying is that there should be like, let's say teachers should teach the consequences of
Yes.
like beating up or like they just say rough playing, if that was what they're saying that they're doing. But it should be more so there should be studies about that. No, there should be more like classes showing the consequences and stuff. But
yeah, like workshops talking about the damages. For example, bringing up stories about boxers. Like recently, there was a boxer named Patrick Day who suffered many blows to the head, and after a couple of days, he was pronounced dead in the hospital from blows to the head. And months before that, another boxer called Maxim Dadashev, he also was pronounced dead in the hospital from various blows to the head in a boxing match. And these are professional athletes, and they have experience in this, but they're also at the same time they're stronger than these children, but they understand what they're getting into. These children don't seem to understand what's happening when they're beating a kid nearly senseless.
But I think that should be a should be sort of like a thing that like a parent and the teacher should teach. It's not only like the responsibility of the teacher to actually teach it, because like let's say if they're rough playing like that, or they're bullying, it might be a result of in their household. They're like that's what they're seeing, or that's what they're learning from their older siblings or from their parents, like being more, let's say like the father beating the wife or vice versa.
Well, that's another issue with punishment. What's the correct way to discipline your child if the punishment you're using to discipline your child is physical? At the same time, you might be conditioning your child to use this form of punishment on other children because he sees it as something that is correct, because that's what he's learning from his parents, from his elders. And if they do it, I mean, according to them, that should be correct, even though it's not.
So what we're saying is that since they see it in the household, then that's what they see as being correct, like a violent, I'd say like violent confrontations and all that stuff, instead of actually talking about it, because that's what they see in the house.
That could be so, because you're basically, I mean, a child that at that age, he's basically consolidating information, consolidating images, observing what his parents are doing, what his older siblings are doing, and they might carry those actions into different environments like school, or in the future, maybe at work, or when they experience a situation with a future partner. And the problem is that you can't really have a security guard inside a bathroom, or you can't have a camera inside the bathroom. So
I think this is sort of a violation of
yeah, of
privacy
privacy.
in that sense. So it should there should be more like awareness
Yes.
about, like, let's say, teaching them that violence is not really the correct way, and teaching them other ways of, like, let's say, taking out the anger by talking about it and all that stuff. But and then in reality, like, adults tend to be pretty busy, and they're not able to provide that for their kids. Like, let's say if they come from a low income family, the dad or the mom might be working, and they'll come back from work, and they barely have enough time to eat, or make food for their kids, and then, like, of course, wash the clothes and clean up the mess of the kid. So in reality, like, in a low income family, like, the mom or the dad can't really provide for them or have enough time to actually do something about it. And then sometimes, let's say, I'm not saying that all of them are, but some low income families are not knowledgeable in that too.
Well, that's a responsibility that comes with having children. The It's a big responsibility, but you should already be aware of that before you give birth to your child. You have to know that the child needs emotional support. The child obviously needs a good nutrition. The child needs to be given a good education, but also you need to guide the child in the correct way by teaching the child how to deal with different scenarios which bring them out of their comfort zone. So how would he resolve a situation like this where he's surrounded by many kids and it seems as if there's no other way out in being ambushed in the restroom with many kids that seem to have violent actions towards you?
Well, like, okay, so, like, let's say I'm the kid being bullied, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I tried to resolve it in that sense that the other kid might not like let me or allow me to do so, because they were taught that violence is the only way. So I could try stopping it, but without, like, let's say, actually having some, um, let's say, like, a, like, power, not really power, but like a say or a way to actually stop them from doing it. I won't be able to actually, like, talk to that kid, because that's what he's gonna think or do.
I agree with that, but I think in this situation it would be the responsibility of the school, because um, your parent is basically responsible of whatever happens at home. They're responsible of you finishing your work, feeding you, providing your basic needs. But at school, um, these kids getting away with these violent actions, it would be on the school. And seems like sometimes in some families, it's not really taken in consideration in boys and in males, situations like these, because males in most cases, the parent would just say, "Oh, just defend yourself. You're a man. You could do it. You should just defend yourself." But in many cases, it's not that easy, and it might not be the correct solution to this situation.
But when parents do that, it might result with more violence. And like what I said, they really don't have the time, or let's say like the know-how to actually show them and do it. And in that way, like let's say if they can't really go to a parent, the kid the kid might feel threatened if he tells them something. If there's like, let's say if he goes over there and tells like the proper staff or teachers or any other person that he could go to, it might result with the bully actually bullying him more, or getting more violent with him, because he finds out that he like, let's say the bully finds out that the kid actually said something to somebody, then he's gonna come and like he's gonna beat him up much harder, or he's gonna do more violent things towards him. So he like, the kid might not feel any security by telling him anything, telling the proper people the things. So it just results with more bullying.
But what would you say that but that's why, and what would you say that would be a responsibility of the parent or the school to make the child feel secure, feel secure enough to walk into office and inform them what's happening? Because I mean, if you think about it, it's a child. An adult obviously has more leverage and more power than a child. If the adult is informed, the adult could inform people in authority, like the school board, the police department, and in that case, the child would have more security.
But okay, so yeah, let's say that happens, right? Now that kid won't really feel like, he won't really feel like as secure, because now kids might end up calling him a snitch, or that popular saying, snitches get stitches.
Yeah.
In some sense. So he's gonna, by him doing that, other kids might come at him.
But what others? In that case, the child would just continuously receive punishment from other kids,
Mm-hmm.
and that gets him nowhere, because in that case, every single time the child walks into the bully, he's gonna get bullied no matter what. So the child would have to feel some security, either built upon by his parents or the school, because it would be an endless cycle of punishment that the child would just continuously experience, until possibly the child receives fatal damage or long-term damage.
But and then so there should be more, let's say, like proper training for like the proper staff to actually deal with something like that, or like let's say have a class where, or let's say like homeroom period, have them discuss things like if the school is able to have like a class that they will be able to feel secure, safe, or at least let's say have a monthly thing if somehow let's say a psychiatrist or some counsel would talk to every single kid and just ask them how their day is going, because at least just asking them and making them feel homely might get them to actually talk about stuff like that. And it might, like let's say in that sense, it might, like the kid might actually like change his mind about stuff, and if he feels more home, like if he feels more like welcoming towards that person, he'll talk about his bullying, and let's say the bully too might talk about like stuff that might be happening in his house, and it might stop some of those like unfortunate things that happen with like kids bullying. But like let's say others, like let's say schools might not have the resources to actually provide a sort of program like that.
Well, in this situation, it was right here it says it was a STEM academy, so it should be a well-funded school.
So it should have been a well-funded school, but they weren't taking the proper steps to actually prevent something like that.
Well, what do you feel would be the proper solution to these type of incidents?
Or like I say, maybe a way to actually maybe at least what I think, a way to solve something that might be like let's say kids will come and talk about like what has happened to them. Kids are willing to talk about stuff like this. Like let's say have like an assembly about like a kid that was bullied, or an adult that comes and talks about some events that happened in his life, and like in his life, like let's say from like when he was in elementary school or middle school, high school, probably college too. So they could have like, so they could relate to somebody, so they could relate their problems and they won't feel alone too. In that sense, they might feel more welcoming to talk about their things because they see that other people have gone through that. And since other people have gone through that, they see them talking about what happened to them, they might willingly go about on their own and actually talk to a counselor or the proper authority to deal with something like this.
So you're saying maybe providing more psychologists in the school?
Not providing more, like let's say you could at least, if there could be like, if at least like one psychiatrist or two, I don't know how many it might be, but if they could get around to every kid and talk to them of cases that might be similar to what they went to or what they might be going through, then they might be more willing to.
So you're saying, yeah, basically what we said earlier, providing more workshops to inform the children, and maybe providing some sort of a way to subscribe to the psychologist services, and understanding the child, and basically so the child could feel a sense of comfort toward the person, and that they're being heard and they're being understood.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that would be a problem with children, that they probably, when they get back home, their parents, since in a case it might be a low socioeconomic, a child whose parents are of a low socioeconomic status, the parent in many cases would come back home tired, fatigued, without time to sit down with their child and talk to them about what has happened, what's happening, what grades are they getting in school, how are they feeling, where's their self-esteem. And in that case, that's where the school psychologist would
So like basically
help
they
out.
would since they're not able to, since the parent is not able to help out their kid, this, like, at least a psychiatrist might be another means or a way to like get that, since they're not able to get it from their parent.
Yes.
And then
Well,
but like a kid that's going through that won't come to the psychiatrist or the counselor. Basically they would have to approach the kid, and of course some kids might not talk about it because they might not feel safe, but then that's when you could try to relate to them. If they're able to relate to them, at least that might be another case, that might be, or not a case, but that might be another kid that might be that might not that would learn how to deal with a situation instead of just going and dealing with it with violence or mass shootings or
well, that's why
something.
there's yeah, like I said, in a workshop, providing workshops so the child could be informed and know that there's that service available in school, where there's a psychologist or a counselor available for the child to.
But just knowing it's not enough. Because I can, like, let's say if I was bullied and I knew that there was a counselor, but I feel like if I can't really trust that person, I won't go and approach him.
One, in that case, who would you approach? If your parents are busy, and your teacher might not listen or understand what you're experiencing, what else are you gonna do? Well, when I was in school, what the services available, there was a psychologist, and there was basically some drop boxes available around the school, anonymous, where the student would come and drop a note, an anonymous note, and the school principal would read them, and she would inform the counselor or the psychologist about what's happening.
So I think that could result in something, but like so, like, let's say if they get, I don't know, like they get a note, an anonymous note from somebody, then they should be able to talk about it. Like, let's say in assemblies,
Mm-hmm.
like not naming it or having the situation, because maybe that bully might remember like what that anonymous person was talking about or what he actually did to that person, so he might know who is it coming from. But like, let's say, talk about situations that might relate to that in some sense, and like, yeah, like film, like at least if they're doing it anonymously, they're trying to reach out to somebody, and they might be able to talk about it in assemblies, and then like, yeah, like what I'm telling you, making them feel like if they could approach the counselor. If they feel like if they're able to approach a counselor, they'll be more willing to talk about the situation or what they're going through. And then if they talk about it, of course, they might, like, the counselor wouldn't want more conflict with those two students or more. And yeah, probably deal with their anger problems or whatever problems, let's say mental or just stress wise. Because either way, an elementary schooler could still get stressed out from like just work or just daily things that they're going through. So it doesn't matter like what age is it, but like if they continuously talk about it, it might stop like events from like at least what this 14-year-old went through.
Mm-hmm. Well, in that case, I'd say probably the school, because you really can't have a security guard standing in every restroom, on back of buildings in the school,
Mm-hmm.
in empty floors, empty buildings. I'd say, yeah, using assemblies, workshops to inform students about psychologists. And providing anonymous drop boxes. Also, yeah, providing maybe installing more cameras, because there's been times when a situation of bullying has happened on back of buildings. I've seen a couple of times, and well, when I was going to school, it was only maybe one or two security guards in a pretty big campus. So,
but then in that sense, like, they can only provide what they can and not really, like, let's say, like, yeah, like schools have budgets, so they can install unlimited amount of cameras or whatever number of cameras that there needs to be, or actually provide more security. But that's like, in a way, they could do like stuff that might not cost them as much, like provide different means of approaching like the proper authority.
But the problem is that there's not enough staff to be walking around everywhere.
I know, but that's why
they don't have the time, and it's more cost effective than paying more security guards to be roaming around the campus and making sure there's no children outside during class, or there's no children fighting in bathrooms, or children bullying other children. It's more cost effective than employing more security guards, because either way, if you don't do this, you're not gonna find out when these situations occur, because these are just few video recordings that surface uh, um, media. It's not. It's a small portion of what actually is occurring. So, what are you gonna do to find out when this is occurring, if it's occurring at all times?
But if you could prevent it, that'll be better than knowing when it is occurring. So, like, yeah, like what you said, like they have, like, let's say like the counselor or a psychiatrist would reach out to pretty much like have a one-on-one session with every student, and then of course having like different means like anonymous drop boxes or like other ways, like let's say have like an anonymous like text number where a student would be able to text them, or like let's say like social media, you could use social media and they could reach out to you and just have like different ways that they could approach, like just have multiple, or just have, yeah, like just different ways that they could approach like somebody that will be able to help them deal with situations or problems that they're going through. Because the more ways that you'll be able to have it, like it might be able to reach out to other students. And like of course, like let's say if they don't feel comfortable approaching that person like face to face, approaching not that person but approaching a psychiatrist or a counselor face to face, then doing it more anonymously like through social media or drop boxes or stuff like that, would help out. And instead of knowing when is it happening, like sort of preventing it before it happens will be way better. So if they have more means to actually approach a person anonymously or face to face, or at least like instead of them approaching the proper authority, like the counselor or the psychiatrist approaching every single student.
Well, I mean, I agree with that. I mentioned providing psychologists and counselors and make them more available to the child.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, you have to be surveilling. You have to be aware of when exactly these situations are happening, because even though there's some children receiving some attention, these situations would continue occurring under the principal's nose without her knowing.
But then like in that way, yeah, they could have like let's say more better like build up a strategy. Like let's say like if they can install more cameras in certain areas or areas that are not visible, have a security guard, like have like a sort of like not really strategy but like a path that they have to take. So like they have to take this path more often to just check out if there's a kid there instead of just staying in one spot.
But at the same time, you have to think, how long is it gonna take the security guard to get there? Because a campus isn't small. A campus is pretty big, even though if it might be an elementary or a middle school or a high school, it's still pretty big. So that's why I'm not suggesting installing a camera in every single corner of the school. I'm saying installing a camera in places that are not visible to a person, or areas covered by walls or buildings. That's what I suggest. I wouldn't suggest, putting a camera in every corner, because if you think about it, it's more cost effective than employing more security guards, because a security guard, you would have to pay him week to week
Bi-weekly.
or bi-weekly, paying the security guard. And if you're installing a camera, you're basically just doing a one payment thing of buying the camera and installing it. That's about it. You're not continuously paying.
No, but like, yeah, like, let's say if that school is not able to like get that budget or that money from whatever they get it from, they could have like a strategy to tackle this down. Like, okay, we're not able to install a camera in at this specific spot where we know that there's been more bullying in there. So instead of the security guards, or the few security guards that they have, at least have them walk through there more often than just going through there, like, let's say, like, once a day. And instead of them going there once a day, and like just just have like different strategies. Like, let's say, I don't know, security guard A will pass by at this time, security B will pass by at this time, security A, since he's off in break, security B will go there again. Like, just sort of have like strategies where there will be less time where kids would be able to like kids will be able to bully kids in those areas that are more prone, or those more like hidden areas. So like it'll be more I don't remember the proper word, but it'll be like it'll be more like those areas won't feel as alone, and there's actually going to be somebody there, since the school is not able to provide cameras, and them like
So
due to like financial reasoning.
Financial resources. But
Mm-hmm.
so what you should suggest, making a committee of parents and allowing them to come to school, and taking the job as a chaperone, as volunteering as a chaperone.
But that won't do anything if they're not trained in it.
Well, the
And a student.
no, they can't do anything to the child because they're not a security guard. But what I mean, they're basically going to be surveilling the school, and whenever something happens, they would have informed the principal. Because if you're talking about schools with a low budget, and them not being able to provide cameras and security guards, what other option would there be than making a committee of parents who feel feel interested in resolving this situation of bullying, and well, they could just be surveilling the school.
Like, yeah, it might it will be able to do that, but they still will need to provide something. And since they don't have, like, let's say if that parent, right, that parent can, like, let's say, like, okay, so it will be like, I think in that sense, I don't know how legally wise it works, but um, if that parent goes there, like, and they need their break, the school should be able to provide something to them too, because now they're not directly employed by them, but they're doing something in school, and then they're like, the school is more liable for it.
Yeah, but I mean, it's volunteering, and if the parent wants to do something about this situation and the school doesn't have no other means to provide any different equipment or employ securities to surveil the school, what else are you going to do? That was parent chaperones were available when I was in middle school, and they would basically walk around the school, make sure everything's in order. They would walk inside the restroom just on the entrance of the door, and they would make sure children isn't fighting or no children are getting bullied. And it was around, maybe, from what I remember, 6 chaperones who volunteered because they wanted to resolve this issue of bullying. And well, the school didn't have any cameras installed or security guards.
But then, okay, so like, you're bringing in people that are volunteering. You don't know, and what, like, why are they truly volunteering for? Like, let's say if you get somebody there, right? You get somebody there. He is more, like, he is prone to violence, or he wants to be there just to, like, look at the young girls or something.
But that's why you provide a background check. Um,
But if they're struggling already by trying to put cameras there, like, how would they be able to, like, let's say, set money just to do a background check?
well, what else are you gonna do? The issue isn't gonna get resolved at all in that situation. So if that were the case, how was it available in my school? Uh, my school and my middle school and Pomona experienced budget cuts like usually almost every school experiences in California. It's pretty common. So if that is not possible, how did it happen in my school? And why wasn't there ever any problems? I mean, I never got to see any parent yank a kid, or I never heard about complaints about the parent chaperones hitting a kid or pushing the kid or pulling the kid. It was never a problem. And obviously, before you accept that parent as a volunteer, you have to do some background checks, and there has to be some sort of contract you're signing, but they're volunteering because the school might not have enough means to provide that service.
Yeah, well, it's understandable, but yeah.
Because in that case, in the case you're presenting, the problem would continuously happen, and the
Mm-hmm.
school wouldn't probably be able to provide any psychologist, any other service to resolve this problem, because it has been a it has been an issue that has been prevalent for years and years, and it has continuously been presented in media, social media, but it seems like it's just a temporary thing. It appears in media, and later on begins to die off, and nothing seems to happen. And there's been many committees, many cases. It has it has been brought up to court many times, but it seems like it might not be in the priorities of the district or the school board, because it's a big problem. I mean, a kid has already died, and that's already one too many. What's gonna happen later? What if this student from Baltimore, what if he experiences some type of degenerative disease in the future? It's a problem that must be resolved, and there has to be some allocation of funds in these districts in order to provide services in form of psychologists or video cameras, or making a committee of parents concerned with these situations experienced by their children.
But okay, yeah, like they could it, like, at least from, like, yeah, like what you're telling me, like it did work when parents came over and helped out the schools. But like, if they could have like better strategies to tackle down this, so like, let's say if like I don't know, the school board or the principals and all that stuff could come up with like strategies to actually tackle this down, like, let's say because they don't have means or they don't have the money to do it, or if they do, they'll be able to tackle problems like this much better by having them, I don't know, like, let's study cases, and like cases from other schools that have worked, like, I don't know, bullying at this certain school has gone down due to this new program that they're providing for securities or for staffs that have been, like, say, providing more surveillance, and actually like pulling their weight and actually doing something to actually stop this. Like I say, like teachers too. Like, there's some teachers that, like, yeah, like one or two counselors or securities might not be able to go to reach to all the kids, but you do have so many other staffs. Like, you have more teachers than counselors. So if they will be able to talk about this before like class begins, and like, let's say if it actually gets through a kid, that would be one less case that they have to deal with, and they didn't really have to, like, let's say, spend more money, but they would have to spend more money in like training. But like, since they have those staff already, they'll be able to reach to more kids than just having the counselor, or just having more like, let's say, like chaperones roaming around or security.
Alright, and moving on from that case in Baltimore, like I had mentioned, there was a kid who suffers from autism. There was a video that surfaced in media where he was just walking on an open campus, and a group of kids, including a girl, were kicking him and punching him continuously, and there was a bystander that just recording, and it didn't seem to stop. It didn't seem like a chaperone or a security or someone from part of the school staff came to stop this situation from continuing.
So yeah, like they could come and do it, but like at least and like the mindset of a little kid, in the mindset of a kid, like if they're doing it, that means that I could do it too. It seems like fun, then I think I'll do it too. Like just seeing other people doing it would promote that sort of behavior too. So like now, like okay, since those kids already have that in their minds, like it would be better for like let's say like a teacher talking about that, like let's say an autistic kid is just a regular person. Like it's pretty much like the same thing with like racism. Like let's say um I could see a certain race as them being people that would steal from you, um or only because they're a different color, or they look a certain way, or their eye shape is a different way than mine, then they're different. And just showing them, like, yeah, like, he might not be there mentally wise because he grew up with a different problem, or he's from a different race. It should be treated the same.
So, would you say it's the situation? Maybe one of the implications of these children partaking in the bullying of an autistic kid. Would you say it's because they don't understand, or they've maybe been taught that these children with a disability are inferior, or
Well, yeah.
they're not humans, and what some people might think.
Well, yeah, like, um, they could be taught that from, like, their house or from school and all that stuff. Because, like, yeah, like, a kid, like, an autistic kid might look different from a, like, let's say, like, a person that doesn't have autism. Or he might act differently. Um, so like other kids might feel superior in that sense, and of course they will go out of their way to like attack that kid, just to have like a certain like an ego boost, or some like I don't know, like self verification that they're way better than that person. And then like yeah, like if you see like other kids were joining in because since one kid is doing it, another kid will do it, instead of just having like let's say like a kid. I'm like, oh no, this is not right, and telling other people, I'm like, hey, this shouldn't be going down, or this shouldn't be happening.
But would you say it's a problem occurring in the parenting, or would you say it would be more like something influenced in school?
It's I think it's a bit of both, parenting and like what they see from other people or what they're taught. Like let's say let's say that I grew up in a family that had like a like let's say like different race parents, right? They look completely different. And I might like I don't see it as them being different, but when I go to a place, like other people might influence me. I'm like, oh yeah, that race is like bad, or that race is ugly and all that stuff. So my way of thinking could in theory change by the influence of other kids.
But one thing I see is that when you're in elementary, middle school, high school, on an average, you're spending at max 6 hours at school. That would leave you with there's 24 hours in a day. That would leave you with 18 hours that you're spending at home versus the 6 hours you're spending at school. So what's happening in those 18 hours that you're at home?
But some kids don't go directly home. They'll hang out with their friends or with their cousins or with other people. Like, they're not gonna be like they're not gonna be at home those rest of the hours because, yeah, they do have lives. They'll go do other things. They'll go buy food or they'll go to a restaurant or.
But as an elementary student or a middle school student, you really wouldn't have that liberty. And either way, I would think
But how
by a
about
majority, there's more kids going directly home versus the kids you would see at an after-school program.
But like, let's say that parent is not there, right? That parent's not there, or that parent gives them the liberty to actually go to their friend's house or to their cousin's house. They won't be at home.
But I mean, I wouldn't say that accounts for the majority of the kids.
But a lot of kids do. Because not every kid is going to be a bully. But a lot of them are. Because there's all these problems with bullying resulting from, I don't know, parents not like teaching their kids well, or the school, or them being influenced by their cousins or friends or parents.
Well, in addition to that, I found a study by Norliza Chi Hazan, in which she basically states that bullying behavior is more common in permissive and authoritarian child rearing styles. So basically, in a permissive child rearing style, the parent will basically be overindulgent with the child. She would basically allow the child to have freedom to decide what they want to do and think how they want to think. So in this case, what if it's the child is a bully and he sees bullying as a correct thing, and the parent isn't doing anything about it because she's overindulgent and permissive, and she allows the child to continue with this ideology. And in authoritarian parenting style, the parent is basically the main authority, so the child doesn't have the freedom to decide or think the way he wants to think. So in this case, I would think it would be more like a child, basically a bully, a child who is locked up in a box and has all this anger and rebellious thoughts because they can't be themselves, because there's a parent basically helicoptering over them, not allowing them to basically learn from making their own decisions and thinking freely. And I found a good amount of studies that basically pointed towards the parenting style that is connected towards bullying behavior.
But and then
Can you go to the restroom or want to pause it?
No, that's fine. But in that sense, it should that's where like let's say teachers might come in, or like other people might come in, and I'm like, hopefully they could see like that, like they could see that they were raised that way and provide help for them. And like if they're able to, like, let's say if they're able to talk about how, like, what's going on at home, then that might be able to, like, change their mind, or let's say at least like somebody would be able to talk to that parent. I was like, of course they're not gonna want to change. They're not gonna want to change at all, because that's what they know, and that's what they think it's right. But at least if they tried to talk to them or approach them, like, that kid in the long run might not have those ideas anymore, and teach their kids, whenever they have kids, that's not right. And of course, like, a parent and like those, they should see, if they truly want the best for the kids, then they should have the freedom to think for their own. Because if they don't have the freedom to talk to think for their own, then they're always gonna need that person there for them.
So in this case, you would advise for authoritative parenting style, where the parent gives more liberty to the child, but they're obviously looking after the child, making sure their decisions don't get out of hand, and they don't become they're not aimed towards the goal of hurting someone or making someone feel different or inferior. And they base their parenting a lot on communication, so they communicate a lot with the child. So in that case, the child would be able to get home, and they would feel the comfort to speak to their parent on what's happening, or like, this kid is bullying me, what do I do? I feel like at school the principal maybe doesn't have enough time, or she doesn't listen to me, or she doesn't believe me, or she might think we're just horse playing, but I'm being, the people are hitting me, the kids are hitting me, so what do I do? And with the parent being authoritative, they're communicating with their child, so the child feels that comfort, that security towards their parent, and not like an authoritarian, parent, like, you do this and you're gonna do it, and that's what you're gonna do. You can't rebel against my demands, and you're gonna do it because I'm telling you to do it. And a permissive parent, it would basically be, oh, okay, yeah, that's fine. But they also really don't communicate with their child, and the child has very little control on their decisions. So they might be reckless in a sense.
Yeah, but not all, like, let's say, not not every specific way of like taking care of your kid or teaching them is the right way. Um,
But
you could use a combination of
yeah.
them, but
Well, in many studies, authoritative is the most positive and more. It's linked in many cases towards the more successful. Basically, the child would feel that security towards a authoritative parent. But I would think in this case it would be more like the what the child is taught at home, how to treat kids with disabilities, because from what I've seen, children with autism are some of the most loving and kind children, even though they have a disability. But many people, I've seen parents prevent their children from interacting with a child with autism or ADHD or other disabilities. So I think maybe the child maybe has a disconnection towards what this child with a disability is experiencing. What does it mean? What is it? What is deterring them or slowing them down from carrying a normal or common lifestyle like others?
no, but okay, like let's say if, like yeah, like if the teacher is not like not the teacher, like let's say if the parents not teaching them or like making them feel like if they're inferior to other kids only because they have a certain disability, they should be taught that in school. They shouldn't, like yeah, like they do need more help. They need more help than like a regular kid, but like they should be allowed to do what a regular kid would do instead of like separating them and having them go to a different class.
Yeah. So not isolating, not alienating the children with a disability from others.
So and then like they could like other kids could see that oh this yeah he has a bit of problems but he is just like me instead of
But
them just going to a different class.
but the problem is that these children, yeah, I understand that. I think that would benefit because the child would begin to socialize um, with an autistic student and begin to form a relationship with the child with a disability. But the problem is that usually when you have a disability, either learning or ADHD or any other disability, you learn at a different pace. You're in many cases uh, you're gonna be way behind than the other student. So that's why in these cases they create these classes where they basically meet the child's needs and they teach at the child's pace so the child won't feel lost, won't feel behind. They'd understand terms or lectures given by teachers.
Because it's going at their own pace.
Yeah, it's going at their own pace because, yeah, these children have a disability.
Or at least like let's say like classes that there's really no, like, they really could do it on their own. Like, let's say if they're in P, instead of having a separate P class, having them with,
Mm-hmm.
like, let's say, like, the regular kids, or the kids that don't have a certain disability, and if they're capable of doing that, then have, or let's say, tell the PE teacher to promote more, like, interaction
Mm-hmm.
with those type of kids. Like, let's say, like, the kids that don't have a disability, and the kids that do, like, try getting them to interact more often, so they won't feel different, or they won't feel alienated.
Well, I see in that case, yeah, including kids, students with disabilities in PE classes, or just including students with disabilities with others, including them with others in the same nutrition time, and also recess and lunch. That would make sense because, I mean, unless if it's a physical disability, um, that wouldn't really make much sense. But children with more like a mental disability, it would be more logical because they don't have a physical barrier, physical disability preventing them from playing kickball, playing soccer. So it would make more sense. So students without a disability could bond with them more, understand them more, begin to see that they have skin, they have fingers, they have they have uh, they have arms, they have hands, they also have eyes. So they would basically begin to understand, oh, this this uh this student with a disability is almost the same as me. He just has a disability, a learning disability.
He just acts differently.
That's it. He's not inferior to me, or he's not superior to me. We're the same in some sense.
We're, like, a little bit different, but still the same.
Yeah, still the same.
We're all human beings.
Yeah.
So we are the same, but he just needs a bit more help.
Yeah, because I think that's more common, and I've seen also in parties where parents pull their children away, or they give an awful face, negative facial expression towards the child with autism or other mental disability. And that's why I think it's more, it stems more from parenting and how the child sees a person with a disability. Because when you're in school, you're just getting lectured. You just have time to be lectured, and at moments you have assemblies or workshops where they could teach you about these things, but by most you need to be lectured on materials such as history, science. They don't really have the time. It's already, I mean, that average 6 hours you are in school. You can't really afford removing more time, knowing that you're provided recess, lunch, and maybe nutrition.
So basically, like, what we're coming to is that they shouldn't be separated.
Yes,
because, like, I see, at least what I've seen in school, like when I was in school, like those kids would sit in a certain group or in a
Mm-hmm.
certain table, and of course be supervised by an adult because they do need it.
Yeah.
They do need that like extra help. But like try getting or promoting, like have like ASB or assemblies promoting them too,
Yeah.
not just them getting the jocks, but getting the jocks and like the popular kids and like let's say like different groups of people just
Also,
interacting all in like a certain event. Like let's say like they'll have like games in an assembly.
also, in addition to that, well, I think another good thing to do is rewarding and recognizing their
Mm-hmm.
academic success, their academic improvement. That's
Mm-hmm.
one thing I've never seen in my years of being in elementary, middle, and high school. I have never experienced witnessing a child with mental disability being recognized for
Mm-hmm.
their academic success and advancement.
So like yeah, like what you're saying is that not just having the kids that don't have, like not just recognizing the kids that don't have a disability, but recognizing them too. Like let's say like yeah, like
With the
category
other,
like
yeah,
sort of like yeah, they do have their own disability, so they will be categorized in a different and like different standard or like a different class.
no, but like,
But like let's say promoting them, like let's
yeah,
say like the most improved kid, I don't know, like let's say John, and in reality this kid has autism
yeah,
or Down syndrome, but now he's able or more capable to talk to other people.
yes, and like just putting them, just mashing them together
Mm-hmm.
in an assembly where students without a disability are recognized for their academic achievement.
Mm-hmm.
Just making an assembly with both of them, because as I have seen, I've never seen that, and that would be that would be a, a good thing to see,
Mm-hmm.
because
Like a confident boost for those
yes,
kids too.
because you'd also have kids that are seeing what students with a disability have achieved and what they're being recognized for, and there's going to be many of them who are going to clap for them because they feel empathetic towards them. Um, they feel some sort of they would feel some sort of emotional connection towards what the child is experiencing, and in this case, this child with a disability could form a connection with other children, not just with
With their certain group.
students that have a mental disability.
That's understandable. And then like that, they won't, like let's say like a kid without a disability or a kid with a disability won't feel like they're alienated
Yes,
or they're um, put in a certain group because they're different.
yes, definitely. And moving on from that, is the case from Moreno Valley where a, a student, it appeared in video. Uh, a student was recording where it was a kid called Diego. He was standing, and he was just standing still, and there was a kid who was intimidating him, trying to push him back, and the kid named Diego, he seemed passive. Well, he wasn't running away from the situation, but it didn't seem like he was um, instigating the other kid who appeared to be a bully, and the student named Diego, he received two blows to the head, and he fell back and banged his head on a wall, and days later was pronounced dead. And I think it's really sad how it was two kids who were involved in this situation, and including the student named Diego, where, if you think about it, these two children at a young age, they basically threw their life down the drain because now they're being accused
of murder.
So what's happening, where these children view violence as a solution towards almost any situation, where maybe they feel some sort of gratification towards physically beating a child or another kid.
But if you see, like, with that, I'm like, of course, like, there's UFC, there's boxing and all that stuff, and like they see their idol, like let's say their idol will be, I don't know, like a certain athlete. Certain athlete is their idol, and they want to be like them, so they don't really see what violence or physical, being physical could cause. And like, at least, like, yeah, like let's say, like in shows, like in shows or in events that they have in TV, they should have sort of a thing so they could try to disconnect, like, a professional athlete from, like, let's say, like me being a kid, like let's say when I was a little kid, and I felt like if I could actually punch somebody like my idol, I could get some sort of, like, I could get this problem resolved, but I don't see the consequences that are coming. So, like, let's say, like, have like a warning for like little kids. I'm like, of course, like, events like that are rated for.
Wait, so you're saying basically providing a warning before the images are presented, but it's already presented before, for example, you buy a pay-per-view event and MM and UFC, Bellator, PFL, other combat sports, boxing, they always tell you before we present these images, they might be violent and they are not appropriate for others to perform outside of the professional sport. And well, I've heard from many psychologists that it's more like caused by what they experience at home. So maybe these children are constantly being beaten by their parents and punished, and they just might see it as a way to bond with others. Maybe they just hold so much anger and they just lash out, or maybe they feel more comfort, they feel more happy doing this even though it's not right.
Yeah, like, yeah, they do feel that, but they should know, like, they should have like a disconnection between the violence and resolving their problem. Like let's say, at least, like, if a parent or in school, they could teach them that in reality they can't do stuff like that and show them the consequences. Like, yeah, like, let's say some of it might be violent, like, or they might show like the consequences in, like a way that it's graphic, but probably like the shock factor of it might get them to not do something like that. And like, yeah, like at least like them being shocked, I'm like, oh, I can't. Like, if I hit this dude and he falls and hits the back of his head, he might be disabled for life,
Yeah.
or this and that. Like, if they know the consequences, then
They might not do it.
they might not do it.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was saying. It's just the human brain. It's
Delicate.
It's so delicate, and when you receive a lot of damage to your brain, it's not in many cases it's not repairable.
Mm-hmm.
And you just can't do much. I mean, when you have a disability like a memory disability, yeah, you could be presented with images or being someone talking to you about that specific image, noise, face, or smell that you seem to forgot, but that's always going to be there. There's nothing much really you could do to return to the normal functioning body you once had, to the normal functioning brain you had before
that event.
Yeah. So I think, yeah, it's more reasonable providing workshops, but I've heard from many MMA fighters, Dave, many of them have experienced bullying, and they basically ventilated their anger. They basically they cycle their anger into training.
Mm-hmm.
They began to feel more secure, but they never used it as a form of getting back at these children, getting revenge at these children. Because at the same time they've gotten disciplined, and I've heard many conferences where they advise putting children in maybe karate, taekwondo, jiu-jitsu, where they are taught how to defend themselves, but at the same time they are disciplined, because I mean, at the same time, if you're maybe a bully and you're placed in these classes, if you're in jiu-jitsu, you're gonna be in classes where there's a black belt, a brown belt, and you're just really starting, and you go in with such anger, such ego, thinking that you're on top of the world, and you could submit these people or out-grapple them, but in a couple of seconds they overpower you, and that continuous cycle of being overpowered teaches you that discipline, that you're not the strongest person in the world, you're not the most superior person in the world, so why are you making these other children feel inferior to you?
Like, yeah, like, okay, it does teach them discipline and stuff like that, or like they can use it as a stress relief too, but like it's not easily accessible to everybody.
No, well, I'm not saying making it accessible to anyone, to everyone, but it's something that has been talked about, but I mean, there's many gyms that are cost free, and you just walk in, and if you want to get some lessons in some sort of combat, you receive it. But I mean, I've never heard of any cases where someone who has experience in combat uses it to get revenge on someone, or uses it in school to bully other people. Because I mean, at the same time, well, you can't really do that because it's illegal. If you have experience in boxing, jiu-jitsu, or any other combat sport, it's illegal because at the same time you're considered a weapon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But yeah, I think it's very unfortunate that this young kid lost his life.
Mm-hmm.
For something that could have easily been prevented and shouldn't happen. And now these two kids who were who have possibly already been convicted, it was something they could have prevented, and they could have continued their life attending school and living in their parents' house, but they decided to beat this kid, and I mean, which causing him to bang his head on the wall, and later losing his life. These kids had the freedom to have a life, to have the freedom that other people that are in prison don't have. So what's happening now to these children who decided to do this?
Like, let's say, okay, so like that kid, he might have not done that with that intention of actually like killing the kid, but if they're taught, like, let's say, taught their consequences from like the actions that they could or would do, it would have been prevented. Like, let's say, like the commercials of like smoking, right? There's so many commercials of smoking, and now like a lot of people see smoking as not a taboo thing, but as sort of wrong thing nowadays, because that's what has been like that's what has been like let's say like shown to them, or like it's been like constantly been shown to them that it's wrong, and you shouldn't do it because it promotes cancer. But now, if let's say like violence, right, like if you beat up a kid, there could be like he might fall, you might damage something in his head or something along those lines. Like they should promote it in some sense, like smoking, so they can know it, because like if it's not like constantly shown to them, a kid will never get it down.
Yeah. Well, children at that age don't really understand that when if you're getting hit in the head or you're hitting someone in the head, the fluid inside your skull, surrounding your brain, it's not enough to stop your brain from shaking inside your skull and banging in the inside of your skull.
Getting concussion.
Yeah, getting concussions and causing internal bleeding and damaging parts of your brain that are responsible for for your sight, for your hearing, for your normal bodily functions, movement. Children obviously at that age don't understand that, and it's something that should be taught, because at the same time you could be preventing another one of these cases from happening. And with this we end our first episode of the podcast of the Open-Minded, and we look forward to creating more content, creating more videos for the viewers, and
hearing what you guys have to say too. Like, you guys could go ahead and comment on it. We'll try to get around to it, and start a conversation, and we'll see.
And we would like you guys to provide ideas on videos you guys would like us to,
future topics
you guys would like us to discuss, and we would read the comments and choose the topic that is most commonly demanded by you guys, and we would make a video. Thank you, and bye.